I'm very happy to be able to announce that we have come today to the climax of a long struggle for justice, freedom, and human dignity in the city of Birmingham. I say the climax and not the end, for though we have come a long way, there is still a strenuous path before us, and some of it is yet uncharted. Nevertheless, it can now be said that after a great struggle, this day is clearly the moment of a great victory.
On the face of it, at least, the agreement between Negroes and leading white citizens of Birmingham, which the Reverend Martin Luther King announced this afternoon, did appear to be a victory for the month-long campaign of demonstrations he has been leading. It calls for the progressive desegregation of public facilities from lunch counters to restrooms, for better job opportunities for Negroes, for the establishment of new channels of communication between the races, and for the release of those of the 2,400 demonstrators imprisoned, many of them children, who were still in jail. But the lame duck city administration has denounced the agreement. Still, both the Negro and the white negotiators insist tonight that they think it will be implemented, and new demonstrations have been called off until the city acts. Tonight, Attorney General Robert Kennedy said that there would be more racial crises like the one in Birmingham, but the lessons learned there can be used to solve future problems between whites and Negroes. The lesson, Kennedy said, is that the agreement was reached because the people were prepared to sit down and work things out. But the wounds have not healed, and the memories of what may have been this country's most significant collision of the races are both fresh and bitter. The climactic events of the past week in Birmingham are the subject of tonight's Eyewitness Report. Your correspondent, Charles Collingwood.
Eyewitness, the big news of the week. Tonight, witness, breakthrough in Birmingham. Brought to you by L&M, the filter cigarette for people who really like to smoke. L&M in pack or box.
Momentous time like this, when a cigarette means a lot, you get lots more from L&M. It's the rich flavor leaf that does it. L&M has actually more of this longer-aged and extra-cured tobacco leaf than even some unfiltered cigarettes. You get more body.
More body in the blend.
More flavor.
More flavor in the smoke.
More taste.
More taste through the filter. Get lots more from L&M.
And L&M's filter is the modern filter. All white inside and outside, so only pure white touches your lips. L&M's the filter cigarette for people who really like to smoke. So get more body, more flavor, more taste. Get lots more from L&M. Lots more.
This is Birmingham, the South's mightiest industrial city as the world knew it this week. These are the front lines of the battle between Dr. Martin Luther King's Negro Disciples of Nonviolence and the uniformed forces of Birmingham, led by Commissioner Eugene Bull Connor, who says, "We were trying to be nice to them, but they won't let us be." The Negro leaders say this will lay the whole issue before the conscience of the community and the nation. The scene is last Saturday. The sights and sounds filmed and recorded as they happened. The place is near the 16th Street Baptist Church, the starting point for Negro demonstrations. The two communities, Negro and white in Birmingham, had been building up to scenes, to clashes like this. Tempers had worn thin on both sides. The situation was perilously close to an explosion.
There's some more officers up here that's going on.
Sometimes the Negroes were not able to contain their anger, to remain non-violent, and they fought back. They threw rocks and broken bottles. There were reports that some of them had knives and guns. But Negro leaders said those people were not their followers. They were, they said, onlookers drawn in by what they saw. There were injuries on this day, and the violence prompted an appeal from one of the Negro leaders. The Reverend James Bevel borrowed a police bullhorn and told the crowds to disperse if they weren't going to demonstrate in a non-violent way. Arrests were made in mass lots, everyone charged with the same offense, parading without a permit. The Negroes had asked for permits and had been denied them. City police were carrying out their pledge to fill their jails to capacity if necessary. They are acting according to the wishes of Bull Connor, the police commissioner, who has set the segregationist tone of the city for many years. In the face of Negro resistance, Commissioner Connor has said repeatedly that he'll never back down. It was against this background that Dr. King was asked what he meant when he said that achievement of a breakthrough in Birmingham could crack the whole South.
Well, Birmingham is a symbol of hardcore resistance to integration. It is probably the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States, and it has had more unsolved bombings of Negro homes and churches than any city in the United States. And the injustices inflicted upon Negroes are notorious realities. Consequently, I have the feeling that if we can get a breakthrough in Birmingham and really break down the walls of segregation, it will demonstrate to the whole South, at least the hardcore South, that it can no longer resist integration. And I think everybody will find themselves going along with it if we can get a breakthrough in Birmingham.
There are 700 churches in Birmingham, and the Negro ones are the rallying places for the forces of active nonviolence. It was here that last Sunday they fortified themselves for a week of uncertain peril, singing their anthem of defiance, "We Shall Overcome." From their church, the Negroes went into the streets again. Their feelings expressed by one mother who said, "The young people aren't going to take what we've taken." Said another, "If I'm going to spend my money in the stores, I think I should have the right to sit down and eat a sandwich in them." The marchers stopped at a small park near the city jail. They were allowed to stay, permitted to demonstrate publicly in Birmingham without harassment for the first time ever. This is nonviolence in its most familiar guise, a law that was to be broken later in the week. The Negroes proclaimed they would carry their fight through to victory no matter what. The white police were taunted, "Turn on your water, turn loose your dogs. We will stand here till we die." And this day, the hoses and the dogs were not utilized. But it meant no particular change in the segregationists' attitudes. A West German camera crew was among those covering the Battle of Birmingham. This is what their reporter heard.
What do you think as young citizens of Birmingham about these demonstrations and these events?
Well, I think it's going to last for a while, but I think we're going to win our side. I don't know for sure, but...
Are you in favor of the demonstrations or not?
No, I'm not. I wish they'd kill them all.
What do you have, as a citizen of Birmingham, what do you have to say to these demonstrations? Do you think they are right, they're wrong?
I think they're very wrong. The sad part about it, the niggers that live here are not involved at all. This is outsiders coming in there. They couldn't... the only ones they get with the school students to demonstrate here. I think it's real sad. I think they're hurting themselves.
Nevertheless, the large majority of the thousands of Negro demonstrators were clearly local citizens. But the man from out of town that Birmingham segregationists most resent is Dr. King. Dr. King has been criticized for moving now in Birmingham, but King's supporters say he had to act or others more violent would. He himself likes to quote Gandhi, "There go my people. I must catch them, for I am their leader." Dr. King's fears were also expressed in this recent statement.
And I'm convinced that if the Negro cannot find this kind of creative, nonviolent channel to channelize his legitimate discontent, he will turn to other ideologies like the black nationalists. So that I think the approach that we advocate is a healthy alternative to what I consider a dangerous development.
Paraders marched out into the hands of the police. Among those arrested, comedian Dick Gregory, one of the demonstrators not a local resident. To Dr. King, this means that the nonviolent movement has come of age. He says, "This is the first time in the history of our struggle that we've been able, literally, to fill the jails. In a very real sense, this is the fulfillment of a dream." He means that white people can't ignore prisoners like these girls who tell why they are in jail.
I marched Thursday. I was on my way to the city hall, and I was arrested by the police for marching without a permit. And I was arrested, and I will stay in here, and I liked it in here, and I enjoyed it here, and I shall return until our race can get our freedom. Because I don't mind coming to jail, I don't mind suffering at all. And I will suffer some more just for my freedom. I want equal rights. I want equal rights. Just like everybody else. I want my freedom just like everybody else. You want me treated just like everybody else treated.
The inscription on City Hall says, "Cities are what men make them," and Birmingham is now changing men. The present administration, although it lost its recent election, is trying to stay in power until October. A state court is expected to rule next week on whether Mayor-elect Albert Boutwell can take office immediately. Boutwell was asked if he's ready to meet with Negro leaders.
I'm ready at any time when the immediate threat of violence has been removed to talk to any responsible local people, regardless of the color of their skins. No man is an island. No man has a problem that belongs to him alone. But the problems must have solutions that fit the individual and local needs and must be met at the local level.
The mayor still in office, Arthur Haynes, has one point in common with Boutwell. Neither has negotiated directly with Negro leaders. Haynes was asked about complaints of poor conditions in jails because of overcrowding.
Well, I don't think that the jail will become too overcrowded. If it is, we will provide temporary quarters, and all law violators will be arrested. This has been our policy down here for 100 years, and we intend to continue it.
On Tuesday, the Negroes gave vivid evidence that they would no longer accept the patterns of the last 100 years. This was a day that the nonviolent movement was not particularly passive about its resistance. The crowds surged into the downtown business district. They gave meaning to Dr. King's statement that the Negro is shedding himself of fear, and my real worry is how we will keep this fearlessness from rising to violent proportions. The sudden outburst prompted a call for hundreds of state troopers to reinforce local police. And outside the South, voices were raised to ask why the federal government wasn't doing anything about all this. But it was acting behind the scenes. And by the time President Kennedy held his news conference on Wednesday, quiet Justice Department efforts had succeeded in making sufficient progress for the President to make this announcement.
Today, as the result of responsible efforts on the part of both white and Negro leaders over the last 72 hours, the business community of Birmingham has responded in a constructive and commendable fashion and pledged that substantial steps would begin to meet the justifiable needs of the Negro community. Negro leaders have announced suspension of their demonstrations. And when the newly elected mayor, who has indicated his desire to resolve these problems, takes office, the city of Birmingham has committed itself wholeheartedly to continuing progress in this area.
The prospective removal of some racial barriers in Birmingham was announced by Negro leaders at a news conference this afternoon. The sentiments of the Negro community were expressed by the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, who earlier in the week was injured by water from firemen's hoses.
The city of Birmingham has reached an accord with its conscience. The acceptance of responsibility by local and Negro leadership, local white and Negro leadership offers an example of a free people uniting to meet and solve their problems. Birmingham may well offer for 20th century America an example of progressive racial relations, and for all mankind the dawn of a new day, a promise for all men, a day of opportunity, and a new sense of freedom for all Americans.
Dr. King says he thinks city authorities probably will go along with the agreement, even though it was drawn up by white business leaders and not by city officials. One of the businessmen says his committee represents employers of 80% of the city's workforce, and he said the accord was essential to avoid a dangerous and imminent explosion. And another white Southern spokesman, James Kilpatrick, editor of the Richmond News Leader, said he felt the Negro could have accomplished more in other ways.
My fear there in Birmingham would be that while they'll gain something out of this, they may gain the desegregation of this store or this lunch counter or something else. But in the end, I think they're going to wind up by being at once closer together and farther apart, if I make myself at all clear. I think there's a Pyrrhic victory and a few more such victories, and they will have lost the whole ultimate goal that they're after. But I don't think it can be attained this way.
This opinion of Mr. Kilpatrick's is indicative of the kind of discussion that Negro tactics in Birmingham have generated. There is speculation about a new Negro, a swing to increased militancy. An examination of this aspect of the segregation story in a moment after this message.
Grand Central Station, crossroads of America. Men and women who might be your neighbors stop to admire the 63 Rambler, best-selling Rambler in history. Here are their faces and what they said, recorded on the spot.
I see an awful lot of Ramblers on the road.
Quite a few people switching to Ramblers.
And they are all very pleased. The new shape.
Brand new.
It's an excellent buy. Matter of fact, we'll be buying a 63, I know.
I was sold by friends.
Rambler, I believe, is selling so many cars because of the reputation of the automobile.
The car of the year.
Deserves the award at the Motor Trend 1963 award.
A lot more to offer at a better price. We have a lot of Ramblers on our street.
Well, they must be good because I see them all around.
We're a Rambler family.
This is the third one I've had.
It's just won me over completely. Way ahead of...
I'm very much impressed.
Rambler owners are your best salesmen.
Rambler 63, winner of Motor Trend Magazine's Car of the Year award. Drive it at your Rambler dealers.
These people came to the Shiloh Baptist Church in Washington this week to hear Representative Adam Clayton Powell. He's been a controversial spokesman for his race for many years, and his critics have labeled him a demagogue and a racist. But his audience liked what they heard.
New Negro today. And we got a new message. And there isn't anybody born going to be able to silence us. They can use every trick of the courts. They can use every trick of mob violence, but we're still going to keep marching. Keep on marching. Keep on marching. At the welkin ring, sound the tocsin. Let the drums roll. Peal the bells. Let the trumpets blare. There's a new Negro now, and he's moving. And he says to you, come on and join me, but if you won't, get out of my way, because I'm coming through.
Writer James Baldwin was questioned about Negro attitudes by correspondent Robert Shackney in Los Angeles.
Luther King, by his own definition, is dedicated to nonviolence as a tactic and, if you believe him, as a principle. But do you think nonviolence will be the pattern, or are we likely to have violence?
How many people do you know who are really nonviolent? How many children do you know who are nonviolent? Martin happens to be a Christian. But the world is not full of Martin Luther Kings. The history of the civilization that you want me to imitate is a history of violence, of bloodshed. What happens, whether it becomes violent or non-violent, I repeat, depends on you.
Mr. Baldwin, let me ask you this. I take it then you're convinced in your mind that what is termed generally the new militant Negro, that kind of leadership will dominate rather than the, if you will, Booker T. Washington kind of leadership.
Let's take it out of that extraordinary vacuum that we've had it for all these years. It is not a matter of a militant Negro leadership. It is a matter of changing the attitudes of this country. Martin Luther King is a great and heroic man, but he cannot do for you what only you can do. It is your country too. And what is happening to Martin, for example, what is happening to all those children in Birmingham is being done in your name. You have no right not to know that. And you have no right to pretend that Birmingham is in another country. It is not. It is right here in Los Angeles. It is in New York. It is in Detroit. This is the national problem. There's never been a regional problem.
At Howard University in Washington this week, the dynamics of desegregation were discussed by a Harvard sociologist who is completing a study of the problem. Professor Thomas Pettigrew, who was born in the South, was interviewed by correspondent George Herman.
Dr. Pettigrew, is there such a thing as the new Negro in America? In other words, has the Negro community started to undergo some kind of fundamental change of attitude, perhaps towards some advanced degree of racial pride and militancy?
Well, I think there is an advanced degree of pride and militancy, but the term new Negro bothers me and for many reasons. Primarily it bothers me because it implies that Negroes were never militant before now. The historical fact is that each generation since the Civil War of Negro Americans have been called in turn the new Negro. Each, in fact, has been new, I think. More militant than the previous generation. I think this is true in this particular group. But the methods have changed, and also, surely, the society in which they're protesting has changed. Now, I think for the first generation since the Civil War, there is a real, hopefully, chance that they will succeed completely in gaining equality. Many people seem to want to know, have they suddenly become angry? I think this is an interesting comment on white Americans, not so much on Negro Americans, that Negro Americans have had to, by the nature of the oppression in our country, hate, to some extent, the whites who oppressed them. Only now, I think the major difference is that this hate is more external. We can see it as whites ourselves, when we didn't want to think it was there before. They are angrier in this sense.
Dr. Pettigrew, with the objectivity of the social scientist, suggests that perhaps in some respects it is healthy for the Negro now that his anger is more external. And he says for whites it is certainly educational. A summing up in a moment after this message.
You can look 5 pounds thinner in a Playtex girdle. Playtex guarantees it, and you can prove it. Place your fingertips so. Press in lightly so. That's how a Playtex works, too. Fingertip panels. They hold you in like firm young muscles. Without losing a pound, you look 5 pounds thinner. Or return girdle and sales slip to Playtex for full refund. New longer leg panty style, too. Playtex, now $6.95 up. Also from Playtex,
I got something marvelous to show you. It's my new Playtex Living Bra. It's made out of that new elastic they call sheer stretch ever. No rubber. It's light and cool and comfortable. I just throw it in the machine, add detergent, even bleach. And look, here's a Living Bra I've washed 50 times. And look at that stretch, like new, because there's no rubber in the elastic. It really does something for you. You've just got to try the Playtex Living Bras.
The events in Birmingham have sent a chill through most Americans. It's as though most people, black and white, recognize what has happened as the beginning of a new chapter in the relations between Negro Americans and white Americans. The truce in Birmingham, if indeed there is to be a durable truce in Birmingham, implies no truce in this new phase of racial conflict. What is new in this is not, as those who have spoken on this program have made clear, is not the Negro. He's felt this way for a long time. What is new is the way in which he is expressing it. The Negro is no longer following moderate white leadership in his fight for equality. He's taken matters into his own hands. And even the more moderate Negro leaders, like Martin Luther King, are being forced into more militant action, which trembles, as it did in Birmingham, on the verge of something like racial war. That's the direction in which the fanatics, like the black Muslims, want it to go. What happens next will depend upon whether the bargain struck today in Birmingham can be made to work. But whichever way things go, Birmingham will have been a turning point. This is Charles Collingwood. Good night.
Eyewitness, breakthrough in Birmingham, has been brought to you by the new Playtex Living Bra. Light, cool, comfortable, yet machine washable with detergent, even bleach. The Playtex Living Bra. Friday and every Friday at this same time for the drama of big events, keep an eye on Eyewitness. This broadcast pre-recorded is produced by CBS News, which has sole responsibility for the news judgments, the content, and editing. This is Harry Kramer speaking.
All over this nation, wherever there is a substantial Negro population, the Negro drive for equality gathered momentum this week. It was nourished not only by fresh demonstrations and gestures of defiance, but by a formidable series of court decisions which strengthened the legal defenses against segregation. The Supreme Court sanctioned sit-in demonstrations. A federal court ordered 2 Negroes admitted to the University of Alabama. Another directed the return to school of 1,000 Birmingham Negro children suspended for taking part in demonstrations. Still another court removed the strongly segregationist city government of Birmingham and installed a supposedly more moderate regime. Although the Negro is voicing his demands in the North as well as the South, the dynamics of the movement are in the South, particularly this week in Alabama and North Carolina. What happened in those 2 states with their sharply different attitudes on racial matters is the subject of tonight's Eyewitness Report. Your correspondent, Charles Collingwood.
Eyewitness, the big news of the week. Tonight, Witness, Week of Decision. Brought to you by famous ever-ready radio batteries, the batteries with power to spare, and by PRESTONE silicone car polish, the polish that makes cars shine like the sun.
New York's Union Carbide building and a demonstration of power to spare. These 4 ever-ready alkaline batteries played this radio steadily for 46 hours. Now, these same batteries will fire 1,000 flash bulbs. We connect the batteries. Turn the switch and look. There they go. These same ever-ready alkaline batteries can still play much longer than ordinary batteries. Get ever-ready batteries with power to spare.
Shines like the sun. But what's remarkable is the light in this mirror does not come directly from the sun. It comes from the sun's reflection on the surface of this car, polished with revolutionary new PRESTONE silicone polish, the long-lasting polish that shines and protects with a diamond-bright silicone shell. Can even be applied in the sun. Polishes so gently, so easily. Get PRESTONE silicone polish, one of many fine PRESTONE products for your car.
This is downtown Greensboro in North Carolina, the place where the Negro lunch counter sit-in movement was born 3 years ago. Lunch counters are desegregated now, so are parks and recreational facilities. There is token integration of schools, but now these demonstrators say they want more. Leader of their struggle to have all racial barriers eliminated is James Farmer, National Director of the Congress of Racial Equality.
One ticket. I'm sorry, I did not choose to sell you a ticket. You do not choose to sell me a ticket? Is this because of my race? No comment. No comment. Thank you very much, sir.
In general, the Negro demonstrators and the white townspeople treated one another courteously. But there were specific jibes at the presence of Mr. Farmer.
The farmer in the dell, hi-yo, the burial, the farmer in the dell. Oh, God. The natives are restless tonight. The farmer takes the wife, the black wife.
All niggers.
Lord is on outside. Lord is on outside. Lord is on outside someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe.
Be admitted?
No, sir, you cannot be admitted.
Why?
I am not going to serve you.
Because of my race?
I'm not going to serve you.
Because of my race?
Move on. I'm not going to serve you.
Why? Why don't I qualify? I'm human.
I'm not going to serve you.
I don't dislike you, boy.
I don't dislike you.
Why won't you serve me?
I am not going to serve demonstrators. Today, tomorrow, or any day.
And if I came back by myself, would you serve me?
No. You're a demonstrator.
I wouldn't be demonstrating.
You're a demonstrator.
At first, the city administration refrained from making arrests, but then it said it was forced to take demonstrators into custody because they blocked exits at restaurants and movie houses, a violation of fire laws. More than 1,500 Negroes were jailed over a period of several days, most of them students from the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical Institute and from Bennett College. Mr. Farmer said the entire Negro population, 40,000, stood ready to go to jail. By today, most of the demonstrators had been released at the request of the governor, and the demonstrations have become less militant as students have been restricted to their campuses. No overt concessions have been made yet, but a biracial committee has been appointed by the mayor to determine what further steps can be taken toward desegregation. Negro leaders say they hope they can force North Carolinians, proud of their progress in dealing with the integration problem, to live up to their pretensions. Mr. Farmer was asked about the specifics of the Negro situation by reporter Nelson Benton.
What kind of breakthrough would you characterize as a gratifying one?
Well, the demands of the leaders of the movement in Greensboro, the local core chapter and the ministers and the NAACP and others, are for a completely open city that is across the board end to segregation. Segregation in places of public accommodation, segregation in the schools, discrimination in jobs, segregation and discrimination in hospital facilities, etc. In other words, Negroes should have the same rights in this city and in this state as any other citizens, regardless of their color.
Tonight, 1,000 students went to the heart of Greensboro and they tied up the business district for an hour and a half. Could you possibly consider this in any way provocative?
No, Mr. Benton. All the Negroes in this country face Jim Crow 24 hours a day. And I think that's extremely provocative to them. And I don't think that an hour and a half demonstration on one day can possibly be nearly so provocative as the 24 hours of discrimination against Negroes.
North Carolina's Governor Terry Sanford says he's trying to do something about the Negroes' needs and problems. And he was asked by reporter Benton about the current demonstrations.
Do you think that this, as they call it, direct action approach, do you think this is a good thing to achieve their aims in North Carolina?
I think the direct approach is all right. It's carrying the direct approach like any other approach to an improper extreme. I think that probably sets up a counteraction that does more harm than good. So I think the direct approach is good, provided the direct approach is not abused.
Do you think then, sir, that it is being perhaps abused?
I think any time when you invite arrest, that you are abusing it and that you are destroying some of the goodwill that's been established under sometimes very difficult circumstances over a period of years.
Negro leaders in these demonstrations talk about not fast enough, and they use the phrase across-the-board desegregation. Is this a nearby prospect in North Carolina?
I don't know what across-the-board means. I think all progress, if it's to be lasting, has to be progress based on mutual consent, mutual understanding, and expression goodwill. So I think you'll make much more progress in the long run if you approach it from the point of view of mutual understanding and goodwill. And that's what we are attempting to do. I make no estimate of how long it'll take to give people better economic opportunities, a chance to have better living conditions for their children, the many other things that American citizens seek. I don't know how long it'll take, but I say we are moving in the right direction.
To these Negroes in the city of Durham, North Carolina is not moving fast enough. Like members of their race in Greensboro and Charlotte, Raleigh, and High Point, too, they say they want to be granted the right to eat in desegregated restaurants, not just at lunch counters. And also, like so many other militant young Negroes throughout the South, these young people were quite willing to go to jail to make their point. So far, these demonstrators have met with greater success than those elsewhere in the state. Several city restaurants have been desegregated this week. Demonstrations have been suspended in favor of meetings like this one last night. A gathering of 1,200 Negroes and a few whites, including the new mayor, Wentz Grabarek, who personally arranged the restaurant desegregation. Negro leaders say they're hopeful that there will be more concessions, and the cooperative attitude of the city administration was made note of by Roy Wilkins, executive secretary of the NAACP.
You know, at this particular time, when there's an argument, as some of the men say, argument going on between you and the city of Durham,
It's an achievement of some kind, and it marks, I believe, without knowing him, never met him before tonight. He was nothing except a name in a newspaper to me. But it marks, it seems to me, the man with whom you are dealing as head of the city, when he comes out to a meeting to listen to you state your case and plead your cause in your kind of language before your kind of folks with no holds barred and no pull punches. That kind of a man has to be honest.
I personally believe that Durham, the people of Durham, are making progress with Durham's problems. Yesterday, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I assembled some of the business and civic leaders of Durham to look at this problem head on. After 2 hours of discussion, it was decided that your mayor should appoint a committee to meet with any groups that have grievances concerning civil rights in our city. A citizen, all citizens, all colored, all white citizens, have a responsibility to their government. And so at this time, as these negotiations get underway, I sincerely pray that you will give to me and the government of this city your cooperation and your full understanding at all times. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
If one were to establish a scale of racial toleration among the states of the old Confederacy, North Carolina would stand toward the top. But this did not save it this week from the same pressures felt in less tolerant areas of the South. It did, however, permit a sort of truce in North Carolina and the prospect of progress toward more harmonious conditions. The story of what is happening in Alabama in a moment after this message.
When you see your finished pictures right away. And now you can get color pictures in 50 seconds with the Polaroid land camera. Polacolor film fits most existing Polaroid land cameras. You can buy it in most areas right now. In a few weeks, everywhere. Ask your dealer about it.
Those who've been expelled, start from the back and come on around and get your flag and go on back. This is the American flag, and this is what we've been to jail for.
These are some of the 1,100 children of Birmingham who demonstrated in the streets and went to jail and then were either suspended or expelled from school. The flags were sent to them by students of 2 New York high schools. The flags were sent to be carried in the demonstrations 2 weeks ago. Here they're being distributed as a sign of recognition and remembrance of trials past. The children's reaction was expressed by one who talked to correspondent Dan Rather.
Well, why did you want to take part in the demonstrations?
Because they always said white folks having this and that, and the color folks don't have nothing. So if all the color folks get together and take part in fighting for freedom, maybe they'll get something. But if they don't, they won't get nowhere.
Would you be willing to go in a demonstration tomorrow again?
Yes, sir.
children did overcome one problem, and yesterday they trekked back to school. The decision that opened the school doors to them was rendered in Atlanta by Chief Judge Albert Tuttle of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The return of the students ended the immediate prospect of further demonstrations, and it nullified a city plan to readmit these children for a summer session at a cost to them of $20 or $30 a pupil. Yesterday, the Alabama State Supreme Court handed down a decision that's likely to soften city militancy against integration. It ruled that Albert Boutwell take office as mayor at once. Boutwell is a segregationist, but he's described in Birmingham as not of the police dog and fire hose variety. The new mayor had this personal reaction to the court's decision.
This has been and will forever remain in my memory a great and wonderful day. And I am eternally grateful to the people of this city who made it possible.
Mr. Mayor, will your administration assist and take a sympathetic attitude toward the implementation of the desegregation agreement made by white and Negro leaders?
Our attitude will be sympathetic to the harmonious solution to all of the problems with which the people of Birmingham are confronted, and the portion to which you referred is an important part of our city and of our problems.
Boutwell's victory came at the expense of the old city administration dominated by Eugene Bull Connor, which contended it should stay in office until 1965. Connor, wearing a memento of the street skirmishes, had this to say about his departure.
Wendell, all I can say is that I have enjoyed my 22 and a half years as Public Safety Commissioner in the city of Birmingham. I don't believe I owe the taxpayers of Birmingham anything. They're going to owe me almost 2.5 years back pay, whether I ever get it or not. I'm going to make application for my pennies, Wendell, and I'm going to get the food line, get me some stamps. I'm going on relief.
Bull Connor's departure finds Birmingham struggling with economic problems. Department store sales are off 4% for the year compared to general increases elsewhere in the South. And it also finds the city patrolled by state policemen sent in by the governor to supplement the local force, until yesterday, led by Bull Connor. The Negroes say these men are symbols of repression, that they should be removed because city police are adequate to maintain order. In the third court decision affecting Alabama this week, the focus of the state's racial difficulties was shifted away from Birmingham to two campuses of the state university at Huntsville and Tuscaloosa. A federal court ruled that the University of Alabama will have to accept 2 Negroes, one at each campus. Once before, the serenity of this Tuscaloosa campus was disturbed by racial strife. That was in 1956, when Autherine Lucy attended classes for 3 days and was then expelled. No Negroes have been admitted since. Alabama is the only state with a completely segregated public education system. Admission of the Negro students is scheduled for June 10th, and there are fears there may be trouble. Correspondent Rather asked students their reaction.
What's the general feeling around the campus concerning the agreement to admit the Negro here this summer?
Well, all the students I've talked to and my friends feel that there's not going to be any repeat of the Mississippi situation, and there's not going to be no violence or anything like that. I think it's just going to be generally accepted among the students, and we all feel that Governor Wallace is going to make a big mistake if he tries any forceful tactics or anything like that.
Have you heard any reaction to Governor Wallace's repeated statement that he will stand in the schoolhouse door?
Well, they'll walk over him. I think that's the general reaction. They'll just walk over him. Heck, he's not going to stop anybody.
No. Well, I feel like it won't be as much trouble as, have been on other campuses, but it will be bad news when the nigger comes here.
Have you heard much talk about Governor Wallace's repeated statement that he will stand in the door if necessary to prevent it?
I'd hate to see him try it, but I'd be proud of him.
obligation to protect the traditions and sovereignty of this state is my obligation and will be fulfilled by me. As governor, I am the highest constitutional officer of the state of Alabama. I embody the sovereignty of this state, and I will be present to bar the entrance of any Negro who attempts to enroll at the University of Alabama. This is legal resistance and legal defiance.
President Kennedy's reaction to Governor Wallace's defiance was made known at his news conference the next day. It was the subject of the first question.
Smith?
Mr. President, how do you regard the Alabama governor's announced intention to block the integration of the University of Alabama? For instance, do you, or does the government plan to use federal marshals as it did in Oxford, Mississippi, if the governor does go through with his announced intention to prevent these Negro students from entering?
I am obligated to carry out the court order. That is part of our constitutional system. There is no choice in the matter. It must be carried out. And laws which we do not like must be carried out, and laws which we like. This is not a matter of choice. If it were a matter of choice, it would not be law. So that these decisions must be enforced. Everyone understands that. Now, I cannot believe that the governor wants us to send federal troops there. I cannot believe he wants us to send federal marshals there. I cannot believe that he would not prefer to have the people of Alabama govern this matter and accept the order of the court and maintain law and order.
Legal steps to prevent the governor from interfering with university desegregation were initiated in Birmingham today. The Justice Department asked for an injunction to restrain Governor Wallace, and a hearing has been scheduled for June 3rd, 1 week before the scheduled desegregation. An assessment of the events of this week of decision in a moment after this message.
Whenever there's a golf championship at stake, you know Arnold Palmer will be in there all the way. Here's a man who really likes to smoke, and what he likes is L&M. He's been smoking them for years. He knows when a cigarette means a lot, you get lots more from L&M. It's the rich flavor leaf that does it. You get more body in the blend, more flavor in the smoke, more taste through the filter. And with L&M's modern filter, the Miracle Tip, only pure white touches your lips. L&M's the filter cigarette for people who really like to smoke. So take a tip from Arnold Palmer. Get more body, more flavor, more taste. Get lots more from L&M. Lots more.
Dr. Martin Luther King, the Atlanta Negro leader, has been directing the integration drive in Birmingham. Correspondent Rather asked him about the effect of Birmingham on the Negro campaign.
Reverend King, what about the manifestations in other cities other than Birmingham that suddenly have sprung up? Do you feel that these are keyed to Birmingham?
Yes, I think that many of the activities that have taken place in nonviolent direct action across the South over the last few weeks and months came into being to a great extent because of the inspiration of Birmingham. I think Birmingham has inspired Negroes all over the South and over the nation, and I think it has caused them to feel that there is power in this approach, and it has caused them to feel a new sense of destiny and a new sense of dignity.
Well, what's ahead in the weeks and months over the summer? Is it likely we'll have more of these manifestations, demonstrations in more cities, or is there likely to be something of a subsiding now?
I have the feeling that we will have more of these demonstrations and mass movements. I think on the heels of the Supreme Court's decision outlawing segregation at lunch counters and outlawing the city ordinances that make segregation possible, we will see developments that will take place in many communities. I think Negroes will take advantage of these new rights, and I think we will see more mass jail ends if necessary in order to gain these rights.
In that quiet warning of more trouble ahead, Martin Luther King stressed the influence of the Supreme Court's sit-in decision. That may prove to be the most important civil rights document since the school desegregation decision in 1954. For what Dr. King and the Negro leaders of his persuasion are doing is to mount a massive assault upon the conscience of white Americans. And since the law is the embodiment of the conscience of our society, each legal advance becomes the jumping-off place for a new campaign. It is in their belief that through white conscience, the ramparts of segregation are most vulnerable, that the Martin Luther Kings differ from the black nationalists. The black nationalists do not believe that the white man has a conscience. And if the assault upon conscience fails, they stand ready to take up the struggle by more extreme means. These principles and that conscience were tested this week as they were tested the week before and will be for many weeks to come. This is Charles Collingwood. Good night.
Eyewitness, Week of Decision, has been brought to you by L&M. For flavor and taste, it's L&M, the filter cigarette for people who really like to smoke. L&M in pack or box. Friday and every Friday at this same time for the drama of big events, keep an eye on Eyewitness. This broadcast pre-recorded is produced by CBS News, which has sole responsibility for the news judgments, the content, and editing. This is Harry Kramer speaking.